My name is Tom Cooper. I'm a retired professor of dentistry. I was a cigarette smoker for 36 years. I smoked 30 cigarettes on a normal day and many, many more on a busy, hectic day. I attempted to become a non-smoker a number of times. Finally, in 1984, I was able to successfully make the transition from smoker to non-smoker.
And I'm Dick Clayton. I'm a sociologist and a retired professor of public health. My area of expertise is illegal drugs, marijuana, heroin, and cocaine. Since 1984, I've been involved with what is probably the most addictive drug we know anything about, nicotine. Tom Cooper and I developed the Cooper-Clayton method to stop smoking to help you make the same journey Tom did from smoker to non-smoker with minimal discomfort. I first met Tom in 1984 when the FDA first approved Nicorette, 2 milligram Nicorette, as a nicotine replacement product. It was available only by prescription then. It was used as an adjunct to a, quote, comprehensive smoking cessation program. When Tom told me about Nicorette and how he was going to use it, I said, that's an addiction model. His response was, that's appropriate. I'm addicted to nicotine.
After that, we met once a week to review what I had experienced the previous week and try to anticipate what was going to happen during the following week.
Tom was successful. Then a friend, Sandy, said to Tom, you've been successful. Will you help me? In the summer of 1985, based on the success of Tom and Sandy, we began meeting with smokers in groups, usually about 20 at a time. The principal thing we did was to listen. We learned a great deal about them and their experience with nicotine addiction. Over the past 30+ years, we've worked directly with thousands of smokers.
This slide shows the 4 assumptions and components addressed by the Cooper-Clayton method. The core assumption is that most smokers are dependent on nicotine. If you don't treat the addiction, the chances of success are limited. We also learned quickly that the habit part of smoking goes away very quickly if the addiction to nicotine is taken care of.
As you might expect, it was not unusual to hear 2 questions. The first one was, what will I do with my hands? I like the sense of handling the cigarette. Our answer was, if you're smoking another cigarette every 30 minutes and it lasts 5 minutes, what do you do with your hands the other 25 minutes? The second question was, don't smokers have an oral fixation and need to have something in their mouth? Our answer was twofold. It's not natural to put something in your mouth, light it so that it gets up to 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, and suck on it. The other answer was somewhat facetious. If you really need something in your mouth, why not use an infant's pacifier? We discovered that there are individual differences among smokers regarding the influence of social and psychological factors on smoking and nicotine dependence.
In the remainder of this introductory session and in the other 12 sessions, we will help you understand and make your way through the Cooper-Clayton method to stop smoking. We will teach you what we have learned from thousands of smokers over the past 30+ years who have used this method to become permanent non-smokers. Because there had never been anything like the 2 milligram Nicorette in the U.S., we read the information contained in the package insert. We needed to know what was in the piece of 2 milligram Nicorette gum and how best to use it. Of course, it contained 2 milligrams of nicotine, making it a nicotine replacement product. We will often use NRT to refer to nicotine replacement product. In addition, one ingredient stood out, sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. I'm a dentist. The only reason the 2 milligram Nicorette would contain sodium bicarbonate was to be a buffering agent. Neutral pH is 7.0. The higher the pH, the more alkaline. The lower the pH, the more acidic. Gum is an oral product, so the presence of sodium bicarbonate in 2 milligram Nicorette suggested that the mouth, the oral mucosa, would have to be more alkaline than acid for the nicotine to work. We checked the scientific literature and discovered that a pH of 7.4 or higher is needed for nicotine to cross the cell membrane in the mouth.
We also discovered that cigarette smoke is more acidic. Therefore, nicotine from cigarettes is absorbed in the lungs. However, smoke from cigars and pipes is more alkaline. People who smoke pipes and cigars do not have to inhale the smoke to get the nicotine. They can simply hold the smoke in their mouth where the nicotine crosses the cell membrane, because the pH is more alkaline.
This led us to recognize two things that were not mentioned in the package insert for 2 milligram Nicorette. First, smoking cigarettes and consuming acidic and carbonated beverages is common among smokers. Second, because the nicotine in the 2 milligram Nicorette requires an alkaline environment, it would be counterproductive to insert the nicotine replacement into an acidic environment. Therefore, we started telling smokers in Cooper Clayton groups to rinse their mouth with water before using the 2 milligram Nicorette, and to not simultaneously use Nicorette with any form of beverage, including water. Second, only 2% of the nicotine that goes into the stomach becomes blood nicotine. 86% of that goes through the cheek becomes blood nicotine. Therefore, the correct way to use Nicorette or the commit lozenge is not chew.
Many using the Cooper Clayton method have previously tried oral NRT products. We often hear, "I tried that Nicorette gum and it didn't work." We then ask, well, what happened? The usual answer is, "I got hiccups, indigestion, and nausea." We then ask, "Did you chew the Nicorette?" And the look on their faces is priceless. They say, "Of course, it's gum." Our response is always, "This is medicated gum, not recreational gum."
When you chew, three things happen, all bad. First, by chewing, your brain thinks this dummy's chewing something. That must mean he or she will need to swallow. Second, an excess of saliva is released to ensure that you can swallow whatever it is that you're chewing. Third, you swallow the nicotine released from the gum base, the chicle, and it goes into the stomach. If the stomach is essentially an acidic holding tank.
What we had discovered in our clinical observations was not part of the knowledge base about how to use 2 milligram Nicorette. In 1990, in collaboration with other colleagues, we published a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association showing the pH of various beverages to demonstrate the importance of considering pH in using oral NRT products. In fact, we don't want anyone to vigorously chew the Nicorette. Instead, bite into the gum 4 or 5 times in order to expose a new surface. Simply wetting the surface of the gum is what causes the nicotine molecules to be released so nicotine can be absorbed through the oral mucosa.
We've learned a great deal in the 30-plus years we've been actively involved in smoking cessation. There have also been improvements in NRT products. The Cooper Clayton method exclusively uses 3 specific NRT products. A, the Nicoderm CQ patches that come in 3 dosage units, 21 milligram, 14 milligram, and 7 milligram. B, the 4 milligram Nicorette gum, and C, the 4 milligram commit lozenge. We often ask, why use these 3 specific NRT products when there are a number of other NRT products available, some of which are less expensive? The answer is simple. We use only the Nicoderm CQ patches because they deliver more nicotine and achieve a higher blood nicotine level faster than any of the other NRT products. The Nicoderm CQ patch reaches peak blood nicotine levels in 2 to 4 hours. The other patches require as much as 5 to 10 hours. The key difference between various patches is that the Nicoderm CQ patch utilizes a rate control membrane. None of the other patches have this.
We use a 4 milligram Nicorette because it effectively delivers 2 milligrams of nicotine into the oral mucosa if used appropriately. That is, making sure the oral mucosa is an alkaline environment, not using any acidic or carbonated beverages, including water, while using the 4 milligram Nicorette and not chewing the Nicorette. We also use a 4 milligram commit lozenge, which will deliver up to 25% more nicotine than the 4 milligram Nicorette. The same conditions apply for using the commit lozenge effectively and appropriately. So the Cooper Clayton method involves 3 NRT products: the Nicoderm CQ patches, the 4 milligram Nicorette, and the 4 milligram commit lozenge. The foundational NRT product is the Nicoderm patch. If someone seems to need a bit more nicotine, we recommend supplementing the patch with up to 4 pieces of either commit or Nicorette a day.
It is important for you to know that neither of us have any financial or any other relationship with the companies that produce and market the nicotine replacement products. We recommend you use these to become a non-smoker. These products were chosen because they provide the best chance to help you become a permanent non-smoker.
It is also important for you to know that the NRT products went from being by prescription only to being over-the-counter faster than any other pharmaceutical product. There were two reasons for the speed with which NRT made the transition to OTC. First, very few adverse events were reported by people using the NRT products. This indicated it is safe to use. Second, the FDA believed that making NRT products OTC would have a strongly positive public health benefit. They would be more available to more smokers if they were not a prescription product. Unfortunately, there's some evidence that the transition from prescription to OTC may have facilitated a perception that Nicorette gum was not serious medicine. Nicorette became an OTC product in 1996. The fact is, Nicorette and other oral NRT products and the Nicoderm CQ patch are still serious medicine delivery devices.
There are 5 drugs that act in a similar fashion in the user's body: heroin, cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, and nicotine. All of them are psychoactive, which means they work directly on the brain. So in essence, drug addiction is a brain disease. Second, they are euphoriants, which means they make the user's brain feel different and usually better, like a party is going on. Third, they're reinforcing, which means they always produce the effect the user wants and are associated with everything else that occurs when they use the drug. Fourth, they cause tolerance to develop, which means that over time it takes more of the drug to produce the desired effect. And 5, they produce withdrawal symptoms when the user suddenly stops taking the drug.
Let's be clear, stopping smoking is not easy. In fact, it is perhaps one of the most difficult things you will ever attempt. That said, you're beginning a very exciting journey, one that you will discover is manageable. There are no quick fixes for heavy smokers. There are no smoking cessation methods or programs that are 100% successful for everyone who tries them. There are no programs available in which you can quickly and easily become an instant non-smoker. If there were, everyone else would be a non-smoker and you would be the last smoker still smoking. I promise you, if you follow the program that we will describe for you, you can become a non-smoker, and more important, you can remain a non-smoker for life.
Most cigarette smokers have a tendency to deny the seriousness of their problem. We want you to be very aware of your smoking patterns. Remember, you were born a non-smoker, a non-nicotine user. You taught your brain to expect nicotine on a regular basis. When you do not provide your brain the nicotine it has come to expect, it has a temper tantrum. You know that is no fun.
You're probably more dependent on nicotine than you thought. One of the most important and unique aspects of the Cooper-Clayton method is what happens in the first week. We want you to continue smoking this next week. Smoke your usual pattern. Don't be surprised to find out that when you get into your automobile, you generally light a cigarette before you start it. Every time you pour a beverage, you usually light a cigarette and take a drag off your cigarette before you sip your beverage. These behaviors are so ingrained that you probably do them without even thinking. They go together and are very reinforcing.
Smoking is a behavior that is usually measured in several ways. The first is pack years. The questions are, when did you start smoking at least 1 pack a day? And how many years have you smoked at least 1 pack a day? If you smoke 1 pack a day for 30 years, the score is 30 pack years. We encourage you to do the math to determine your score on pack years.
The second measure is puff topography. Puff topography involves puff volume, how much smoke you inhale, puff duration, how long the inhalation occurs, and inner puff interval, how long before you take another puff.
Tobacco cigarettes or combustible cigarettes are a very efficient drug delivery device. By changing how you smoke, you can change how much nicotine is delivered to your brain. A cigarette usually burns for 5 minutes. Most smokers take 10, 3-second puffs during those 5 minutes. Under normal circumstances, they get about 1 milligram from each cigarette. However, by changing the puff topography, a smoker can get up to 3 milligrams of nicotine out of a tobacco cigarette.
Smoking is a good example of an overlearned behavior. It's not unusual for a smoker to report that smoking has become so automatic they do it almost without thinking.
In order to help you make the journey from smoker to non-smoker, we need to know what your pattern of smoking is. Therefore, during the next week, we need for you to record every cigarette you smoke as you smoke it. Yes, that's right. We want you to continue smoking your normal pattern this next week. Recording your consumption patterns throughout every day in the first week is a very important part of the Cooper-Clayton method. In addition to making you exceedingly aware of your smoking, recording your smoking patterns will help us understand how much nicotine you will need from the nicotine replacement products used in the Cooper-Clayton method to stop smoking.
We have over 30 years of experience helping smokers become non-smokers. Most of the people who decide to use the Cooper-Clayton method to stop smoking are using regular, standard, combustible cigarettes. These cigarettes are called combustible because you light one end with fire and then draw smoke through the cigarette and the filter into your lungs. However, some who use the Cooper-Clayton method are also using other nicotine delivery devices, such as e-cigarettes. Some use e-cigarettes exclusively, some use both regular cigarettes and e-cigarettes.
For the next 7 days, use the recording form. Each time you light a cigarette, either a tobacco cigarette or an e-cigarette, make a hash mark on the recording form. We expect you will come to the same conclusion I reached in 1984 after recording every cigarette I smoked for an entire week. I discovered that cigarettes were controlling me. I could only get back in control by eliminating cigarettes. Then a sobering thought hit me. I tried to stop smoking approximately every 5 years since I started smoking in 1948. The thing that continued to drive me back to cigarettes was the withdrawal symptoms I experienced each time I attempted to go cold turkey. You know, cold turkey makes a great sandwich after Thanksgiving, but it's a difficult way to become a non-smoker. We assume that you're probably dependent on nicotine. There are several common symptoms of addiction to nicotine. They are, number one, craving for nicotine, anxiety, irritability, restlessness, mood change, nervousness, disruptions of your sleep, drowsiness, trouble concentrating, increased appetite and weight gain, headaches, muscular pain, constipation, and fatigue. Let's review what is happening to cause these withdrawal symptoms when you've tried to just lay your cigarettes down to go cold turkey. As we mentioned earlier, the cigarette is a very efficient device to deliver nicotine to the brain. About 7 seconds after you inhale a puff of cigarette smoke, the nicotine reaches the brain. Because of the acid nature of the cigarette smoke, the smoker must pull the smoke into the lungs to absorb the nicotine. This video shows how nicotine piggybacks on tar droplets in cigarette smoke. The nicotine is absorbed in the lungs and rapidly goes to the brain at concentrations of about 300 nanograms per milliliter of blood. A nanogram is 1/1 of a gram.
The nicotine is then diluted as it flows through the body. In the venous system, represented by the blue, the concentration of nicotine is about 18 to 35 nanograms per milliliter when the individual smokes cigarettes. 18 to 35 nanograms per milliliter is a very important number for you to remember. The nicotine level in the cigarette smoker's blood goes through a high peak and a low trough with each cigarette. When a smoker completes a cigarette, a peak blood level of about 35 nanograms per milliliter is usually reached. As the body metabolizes or eliminates the nicotine, primarily in the liver, a trough level is reached. As the smoker's blood nicotine levels near this trough withdrawal symptoms begin. The trough blood nicotine level is about 15 to 18 nanograms per milliliter. Therefore, smokers spend each day moving between the peak of 35 nanograms of nicotine and 15 to 18 nanograms of nicotine. They spend the day lighting another cigarette, when they near the trough in order to avoid the symptoms of nicotine withdrawal?
We have two goals. The first is to replace the nicotine you are getting from tobacco or e-cigarettes with nicotine from one of three forms of NRT: the nicotine patch, the nicotine gum, or the nicotine lozenge. The second goal is to give your brain enough nicotine from the nicotine replacement product so that you're always near the trough level of 15 to 18 nanograms per milliliter. This will help minimize and even prevent withdrawal symptoms from occurring.
So, during this next week, you will record every cigarette you smoke when you smoke it. This should make you very aware of how nicotine dependent you are and how your life revolves around smoking. 1 week from today, you will eliminate cigarettes as your source of nicotine and use a nicotine replacement product.
The Cooper-Clayton method is based on nicotine replacement therapy. Replacement therapy is a temporary, alternate way to give your brain the nicotine it craves. It's temporary in the sense that our ultimate goal is to get you to where your brain once again considers zero nicotine normal. It's alternate in the sense that you're getting the same nicotine that you formerly got from either combustible cigarettes or e-cigarettes, but are getting it in a much safer way.
Most of the people who decide to use the Cooper-Clayton method have been smoking for 20 or more years and are smoking 20 or more cigarettes per day. It is possible, however, to be addicted to nicotine smoking a much smaller number of cigarettes a day. A very efficient smoker takes more puffs, takes larger puffs, pulls the smoke into the lungs more deeply, and holds it in the lungs longer. Remember, by changing their puff topography, a smoker can get up to 3 milligrams of nicotine out of a cigarette instead of the 1 milligram they get when smoking in their normal pattern. This means that it's possible for someone smoking a pack and a half to change the way they smoke and drop down to 10 cigarettes a day, yet still get the 30 milligrams of nicotine they were getting from the 30 cigarettes a day.
When asked in surveys, the majority of smokers say they would like to stop smoking. For most of the smokers we've worked with over the past 30 years, smoking is fully integrated into their life. They see themselves as smokers, and it is a key part of their personal identity. I was a heavily dependent smoker. 30 cigarettes on a normal day, up to 60 on a very busy and stressful day. When someone asked me about quitting, I got very defensive, especially if they were non-smokers. Quit is a powerful word. We never use the word quit. When talking with smokers, we ask, would you like to become a non-smoker? We have found that smokers who are most successful come to the same conclusion I reached in 1984. They're able to say, I believe I will be better off as a non-smoker, show me how. We want to help you make that transition from smoker to non-smoker with minimal discomfort. Dick and I suggest that you allow us to visit you at the same time each week for 12 weeks while watching the video. As you view each week's video, we will help you understand what to expect during the following week as you go from smoker to non-smoker to non-nicotine user. We have watched thousands of people succeed. Don't stop using the Cooper-Clayton method because you're having a problem. We can only help you if you continue to try. What's the appropriate video session each week? You will learn many things that will make it easier for you to become and to remain a non-smoker.
In summary, this program was put together by someone who smoked for 36 years. He dealt with his dependence on nicotine 1 week at a time. It's based on the assumption that you also are probably dependent on nicotine. If you are dependent on nicotine, that dependence can be treated. Many other people have used this program, experiencing some of the same problems and achieving some of the same successes that you will be experiencing. Don't beat yourself down. Stopping smoking is one of the most difficult things you will do in your entire life. We'll be here to support you each week through the video. You can avoid most of the discomfort you experienced in previous efforts to stop smoking. We eliminate the guesswork by telling you what to expect the following week. All the research in smoking cessation and our work with thousands of smokers clearly proves one absolute fact. You need support as you make your journey from cigarette smoker to non-smoker nicotine user to nicotine-free ex-smoker. The more support you have, the greater your chance for success. If you have a spouse or significant other, enroll them in your private support group. Enlist non-smoking coworkers to support you. Request that other non-smoking family members help and encourage you. We don't know a single participant in the Cooper-Clayton method who failed because of too much support. We know some who might have succeeded if they had had more support.
We're going to show you the Cooper-Clayton method to stop smoking. You are going to follow the method. I cannot describe to you the thrill you will have when you look back 12 weeks from now and say, I am no longer controlled by cigarettes. What a great victory.